Everything's still good?
Yeah, just waiting.
Hello and welcome back to the Sidescape Gaming Podcast, episode 135. I'm your host, Jake Burke, and joined, as always, by James St. Charles and Ted Libby. And we already said hello before our show crashed, so I don't want to say it again. We're getting down to business. I want to talk to you boys about The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. We've all played it. Ted, how many hours roughly are you in?
18-ish.
18-ish. James?
Like 20-ish maybe.
20-ish, okay. And I'm about like 65-ish. It's a little more. Just a tad.
Okay.
A tad.
He might be underselling it a little bit.
Just a tad. But I want to know, let's talk our broad strokes opinions of this game, and then I think we have a lot of stuff we want to talk about, because we really haven't talked about us playing this game for the past 2 weeks. And it's a big, monstrous game. Ted, what is The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom?
Breath of the Wild 2?
Yeah.
But I mean that more significantly. It's like Breath of the Wild remix?
Yeah.
I don't know. Do you want me to dig into the plot?
No. But I think that's kind of what it is. What do you think about it?
I don't really know how to feel about it. I will say, first right off the bat, it did the one thing I wasn't expecting it to do, which is make me re-interested to play a direct sequel to Breath of the Wild. I even said it on this podcast. I was like, they need to somehow change the formula to make me re-interested in a game that I basically already played.
Yeah.
And I will say they definitely did that.
Oh, yeah.
We'll dig more into that here in a sec. But yeah, overall, it feels like a remix of a game that I've already played, and that's very interesting.
Yes. Yeah. James, how do you feel about it?
Yeah, I think when I first got it, I thought I wasn't going to get the same feeling that I had when I first played Breath of the Wild, because that first feeling when you play it and you're on that island and you're like, the world opens up kind of.
Yeah.
Which
jumping off the Great Plateau.
Similar. Yeah, dropping off the plateau. You're like, that was like a big moment, and just exploring was huge. And then this game just takes it another level, and that level is up in the sky and brings it back down.
Yeah.
I loved how it's played so far, and I definitely feel it is just better Breath of the Wild. Like it's nice. Everything's clean. Like, some things are still there from the old game that I'm like, okay, but there's like improvements. There are things that like make it better and manageable.
Yeah.
Which we can talk about later.
Yeah. I'm like kind of surprised how much I like it. Just because I was kind of curious. We were talking a lot about being open.
You were talking about not playing it when it first came out. You were
How insane
high.
is that? Yeah, I was.
I know.
Yeah, that was an insane
because of Jedi Survivor, you were about to be like, I'm gonna take a break.
And like, I was kind of done with the open world kind of mess that was that game a little bit, and like, I was really turned off about doing it again. And I am completely like enamored by it. Like you've said, James, like and Ted, it's just a sequel to a Zelda game, and like, it's the same map, which I think is so interesting. It's like the same map, but feels. Then there's two different maps.
We should dig into that, though, because Zelda games have been coming out for 30 years.
Yeah.
This is a direct sequel. The storyline events take place very soon after the end of Breath of the Wild. And on top of that, it is the same engine, the same design space that they, like you said, it's when Jake says it's the same map, like, if Jake says it's the same map.
Yeah, like it's Mount Doom's the same place with the same corridors and everything. They've added
same
caves,
areas,
same. Like all the caves are added, but
and to its credit, I will say I didn't remember. It's been a long time since I played Breath of the Wild, but I did not think of it as the same map because they make these kind of weird changes. I forgot it's not called a calamity anymore. It's called like the upheaval.
The upheaval, I think is what it's called.
Which is the big, cataclysmic event that's affecting the world this time around. And that changed enough of the map to make me think, oh, this might be like kind of different in some ways. But Jake, if you're telling me it's the same map, then I believe you. It's the same map.
It's pretty much the same map that they have like different things have happened at different areas now.
Yeah. Like, some of the areas are a little bit modified, but a lot of the same areas like Gerudo, like the like area you go before you go into the actual.
Yeah, like the Rito village, the bird village is the exact same build of the village before. The shop is in the same exact spot. But then they've added different towns and new stuff that's being built.
And then the elements like that are affecting the world, like affect the map, which I think is cool. You know what I do want to talk about. You're Ted keeps bringing up, like, we're playing a sequel.
Yeah.
This is a direct sequel. And I think that works in its favor. And I think back to like old Zelda games where it's like let's say Ocarina of Time or something like that, where you're playing the game, but within the game it's kind of nostalgic because there's like a time jump and time skip.
Yeah.
This feels like a time skip within like one game. If you had like one game and combined these two games and made it one, it's kind of just a time skip.
Mhm.
Like sure, some things have like changed in terms of abilities, but it's like you're playing a time skip.
Well, and what I think is so interesting, Ted talked about it being a remix of what Breath of the Wild was, and it's like, for me, it's almost like really refined. Like they like made Breath of the Wild, and then they got to just make a better Breath of the Wild. That's like more
With the same engine.
but
With the
then,
same hardware.
Yeah, oh, and that's just crazy too.
From
Pokemon
6
came out
years ago?
and then this is just wild.
6 years ago, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
Around
the
there.
sequel was like 6 years ago. And like what they were able to do is like they were able to find a way to make moving around this big open space easier, more enjoyable. Like now the exploring is just like I can go anywhere I want really easily. Rather than like
horse everywhere.
Yeah, before it's horse and like I'm gonna climb up this peak to then jump
climb
off
a peak and then fly.
Yeah, and I like that that's like been refined to make like your adventuring even quicker and even like more fluid. Like they've expanded on just how exploration works and then your creativity with what it is as well. Yeah.
That's the big part of the game.
Yeah. The ultra hand. So yeah, in this game you have your new powers like in the last one, which was like a bomb and an ice block and everything. You have this like giant hand that you can use to pick up pretty much anything that's an object in the world. And then you can connect it to other objects to make crazy either platforms or bridges or boats or anything with different
And when you think about it, like I think when that was like talked about, people were like, this is gonna be awful. We're gonna get Banjo-Kazooie nuts and bolts. It's gonna be awful, and it is the best thing I think I've ever
it's so
played
easy
in
to
terms
use.
of
It's
like
so great.
that type. Yeah, it's seamless. The physics are amazing. You hear all these developers that just like comment on it that it's incredible how well the physics work.
Yeah.
And I mean, from what we heard, this game got delayed, which of course everything gets delayed nowadays. But they were basically done, and they spent a year of polish. Imagine any other company, any other American company. I'm just gonna say American. Spending a year for polish.
Yeah.
But wow, it's gonna be such a payoff. This game is gonna win so many awards.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think like what I think is really interesting, and we'll kind of talk a lot about different things with Breath of the Wild because it is so much of the same game. But like, so there is that moving around factor. So then you also have your like, what's it called? Ascend. We have your ascend ability where you can like shoot through the wall, which if you aren't using that now, you will start just using it all the time. Like that is like a main way to get around once you kind of remember you have it. So you have that, you have the ultra hand, and then you have the reverse time mechanic. And then like one of your other powers is reversing time. And there's constantly those platforms falling from the from the sky that you can reverse up to. And so like, what do you think of the new power set and then the shrines that go with it and those like puzzles that kind of come into play?
I really like the new power system. A lot of it for me has been the building, which has been really like if the name of the game for Breath of the Wild was Explore, it feels like the name of the game for Tears of the Kingdom is Create. Where because like there are these they're not alien, but the forebearers, the forerunner,
the Zonites,
Zonai that are the new race as part of this upheaval, loosely in the plot of this game. They drop these like, what do you call them? I guess like modern day or futuristic artifacts. So you can get like wheels that turn or jets so you can create
rockets,
flying machines or driving machines. And like some of them, including in the shrines, are there to solve puzzles, which to me has just been like fantastic. It's just, this is the thing that brought me back into Breath of the Wild 2 is this idea of like, I should be making like a jetpack here so that Link can jump on so I can fly. And that to me has been really interesting. This kind of, it's almost like the game Besieged, if you remember that game.
Yeah.
A silly little game where you build catapults. It's kind of like that, but in an already flushed out Zelda game.
Yeah.
Well, I think so from the first game with the shrines, there were people who were coming up with like creative things to solve them. Like that one ability where you can pause an object, like, and then the stasis, where you can stasis an object and then like hit it a bunch of times and then like fly across to the goal, and that was like how some people beat the shrines. This one feels like you can just do anything really. Like you look at I'll play a shrine and I'll beat it like nowhere near the intention. just because it's like, oh, this is just how it went. Like I just
Yeah.
had these objects, I had this kind of setup, and it worked out really well. And I think that again, the shrine's amazing. I'm like a shrine hunter. Like I just see a shrine, like I have to go do it. I have to figure out this puzzle. I
Yeah.
love the puzzles.
I would
Barely
say
touch story.
overall, I thought the shrines were a little bit weaker.
Hmm.
The ones that are more creative stand out to me as being much more creative.
Yeah.
But especially, I spent a while kind of in the initial two areas. And a lot of that initial stuff is just kind of, like Jake said, it's like, remember to use the ascent power. Remember to
There
fly
are a
up.
few, like, yeah.
But
Remember to fly up into the sky. And so a lot of it feels very much, I don't want to call it training wheels necessarily, but it's not as mind-blowing as the first game, because I've done, at this point, 200 shrines already.
Sure.
the game is very much still for kids. Some kids gonna come play this game, and of course, like maybe they haven't played the first one. Maybe
Yeah,
they
that's
have.
true. That's true. Nintendo makes toys for kids.
True.
Yeah, and they're gonna make a Zelda movie for kids, just like Super Mario.
Hey, it's gonna gross $1 billion, and I think they'll be okay with it.
Exactly.
Yeah,
But I get what you mean.
So then they also, I think, like with it, expand much more on not just the puzzles, but also just the use of the world in general. So with the fuse ability, every weapon has been like decayed since the upheaval, which I think is kind of interesting. And now you're like using stuff that you found from either like killing enemies or objects around the world or different supplies, and fusing them to your weapons to make different, basically weapons.
Or more powerful weapons.
Yeah, more powerful
I think
and add durability.
that's something that they basically incorporated in this game to address what I think was lacking in the past game, which was you pick up a weapon, you'd use it a couple times, and it breaks. And this time you can kind of like pick up a crappy weapon and make it a little bit better by attaching a giant boulder to it, and it hits like a truck.
Yeah.
So that the fuse ability like really just like filled in a gap where you just never, you saw a crappy weapon, you would never pick it up. But now it's like, okay, maybe I could actually use that and combine it with this, so I can break all these rocks. There's some really good play there.
Yeah, the fuse, I didn't figure out the fuse mechanic for a first few hours. And then I figured it out and was pretty blown away of like, oh, I can combine these two things to make better things. This is awesome.
Yeah.
But ultimately that faded for me. This is still very much the same style from Breath of the Wild, where your weapons will decay or break after use. And so you are kind of always cycling through weapons. It's just now you are cycling through weapon pieces as opposed to just weapons.
Yeah, I think like what I like about this system opposed to the old system is like, yeah, you're still burning and turning, but like it's now an activity to like make a new weapon and see what you have. Or like in Breath of the Wild, you would pick up tons of monster pieces and like maybe make elixirs, but nobody really did that. It's like this now has like certain enemies. I'm like, well, I actually want to go hunting for this guy because like he drops a really good horn that becomes like a really good one-handed sword. And like I like that there's like now like a piece of interactivity within the durability issue that people hated.
Yeah.
So that for me, like I like there's some there. Sorry, James.
Yeah. Oh, I was just gonna say, I don't think it changes the durability. If you didn't like that from the first game, it's still gonna be there.
Yeah.
But I think if you are interested by that, or you were okay with that, it adds just that extra layer to your brain.
That's what
you're
I
thinking
like
about it just a little bit more. Yeah.
And I know we're talking about the physical weapons, but I like the new sort of things you can do for the bow and arrow, which is like you attach this like fruit and it makes it explode or fire or shoot electric, and like that to me is amazing. Like I love that incorporation. It makes me like, you don't have to have like bomb arrows from like the first game, or fire arrows or whatever. Now it's like any arrow, and it just put a fruit on it, and then pew, it does whatever you want it to do.
Yeah, you can make it bouncy, or like just you can make it fire straight. I think that's really interesting.
I love that. That's and I like the bow and arrow system, even though it's hard to like the gyro aiming. What kind of aiming do you guys use? Yeah, okay.
I use a controller. I play on the TV.
I use a controller, but gyro aiming is still on the Pro controller. You can still.
Oh, I turned that off.
Yeah, it's fine. It doesn't save you in a pinch. It's kind of just more fun to use when you're stealthed or not in combat, and you can take
like
that time.
Must.
Yeah.
It's a must for me on like handheld. Like there's no way I could like use the regular joystick. Yeah, because you just get precision accuracy with that. Steam Deck has that as well. Like it's very. I'll gyro aim sometimes in some games, and it's really accurate.
I never even thought about that. Yeah, because you're just moving interesting. Huh.
Yeah. So you can get more precision than you can with the joystick, because the joystick you can't. Well, again, this is a problem with all Nintendo games, but you can't really like set your joystick sensitivity. It's like either low, medium, or you're high.
Yeah,
like that's it. There's no like tuning. But yeah. The bow and arrow is a lot of fun for aiming. I love getting the headshots on that enemy.
Yeah, and the noise it makes.
Yeah. Oh, I guess speaking of enemies, like, so they're very similar enemies from the first game.
Yeah.
I mean, some of them are exact.
They're mostly the exact same enemies.
Yeah,
like,
they're mostly exact. But there's some new enemies like that have come from the people, which they have like interesting effects. I don't want to talk too much about them. I guess they're a little bit.
I think they're all over the internet now at this point.
They remind God, what were those enemies in? Was it Majora's Mask or Ocarina of Time? Where like little like zombie enemies? Are these the same enemies?
I have not seen these enemies yet in my playthrough.
Whoa, you haven't been? Okay,
I've seen pictures of them, but I haven't been to the Gerudo Desert yet. In all my hours, I have not gone to Gerudo Desert yet.
That's where I went first.
Really?
I just made I didn't mean to go there first. I was like, oh, I'm here. I might as well just like look around. And I was like, oh, I probably shouldn't have been here first.
Did you do the first like quest there? Did you like get the first?
Yeah. I'm basically like almost done with that area. But I did a lot of exploration. It's a really fun area.
Yeah.
But so what happens, I think, with this game, and I think maybe, I don't know, Ted or you, Jake, you can comment on it, is like after you begin your starter island in the sky, you kind of just go wherever you want, which is the beauty of Breath of the Wild and now Tears of the Kingdom. It gives you that exact same, like, just go where you want, just fly wherever you want. And I immediately just like flew down, went in my starter area, and just started walking and running. And when I was thinking, I don't know, Jake, you like seeded this into my mind about like Jedi Survivor, and like I just kept thinking about like what was missing from Jedi Survivor. What is missing from Jedi Survivor is the random events.
Yeah.
Like I left the first town and like I joined up with the general from the keep that you're supposed to like. He's like, where's the princess? And he's like, hey, we're just gonna go and fight this one area. Like come join us. And I was like, all right, I'll just come join you guys. And we're just like in some mock battle. And I just randomly started walking. Like I was like, man, this would have been so sick if that was like Jedi Survivor. You just joined some random battle, but that was totally missing. And that's what this game has. It's just random events or little battle here, a little Korok here.
Emergent gameplay is this idea that the world's happening and you'll come across it and join in whenever you feel like it.
Yeah.
And that was very apparent in the first game as well.
But, and that's this game to a T. Now that you can move around so much faster than before, you're constantly just finding something new to do. Where like I'll set my mission marker to like I'm gonna go here and do this mission, and I will then do nothing close to that mission for 2.5 hours.
Right, like, that's exactly how I play, Jake. It's like, I'm gonna probably go to that point, and then it's like, oh, but there's this little like dungeon thing that was not in the first game at all, and I want to go in that dungeon and have some fun.
Yeah, just like, I guess I'm gonna go explore the underground now for a bunch of hours.
And the underground? Like we didn't even talk about the underground.
Yeah, so now they also have like a sky island. They have 3 different layers of the map, which is really cool. They hide that like layer of the map, just like Elden Ring.
Hit it.
Yeah, and then like you go down there, like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, when I first jumped down, I was like, I didn't know I could jump down there. I just randomly did. I was like, oh.
Yeah, because there's a mission that guides you down there, but I didn't do that right away. I like found one of the holes on my own, and I was like, what the heck is this? Oh my god, there's an underground.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened to me. I found one of the holes, and I talked with someone, and they're like, oh yeah, I'm exploring the underground. And it's a Yiga, the Yiga clan. They jumped me. It was hilarious.
Yeah, I love
they're like, oh, you're down here too? Oh, you can... And because they're disguised.
It's so fun. Oh yeah, so I just love that you like that sense of finding something new all the time. And I think that's why I like that weapon kind of fusing mechanic as well. As I feel like I'm finding new kind of combinations within even that, where it's like, you know, this little minute detail within that system has like so many options.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, and without any spoilers, Jake, you've probably played the most of the story.
Yes.
Which Breath of the Wild story was, I would call it vague. It was not the center of your attention. It was kind of just loosely capturing why you were there. But other than that, you know, what you wandered around doing became your story in Breath of the Wild. This game is much more centered. It has cutscenes. It has prime characters. You pretty early on have like a main objective. Without any major spoilers, do you like where the story goes?
Yeah, so yes, I do. I actually am really interested in what the story is. What I think is really fascinating, like we've talked about, this is a sequel to Breath of the Wild. Like, Breath of the Wild was all about like waking up in this world and like what happened to it. Like what happened to Hyrule, this new Hyrule that I'm in. We know what happened, now we're like seeing what is happening again, and like there is a past story, of course, that's like something in the past, but it's also very present at the same time without giving too much away. That like they find a way to make the past feel very present, which is cool. But I like that this story involves Link so much more than usual. Usually Link is like a newcomer into a story, and he's like, what's going on? Now all these people know Link throughout Hyrule and know his connection to Zelda, and it just changes how you interact a little bit with the characters. And I think that adds a lot of the story. And there's just wild little things. Have you guys found the newspaper yet?
Yes. I did that the first thing.
Okay. I just love that there are like, James, there are so many great side quests in this, but there is a newspaper that you will find, and you get hired by the newspaper to become a reporter to locate Zelda. And you work with a different news reporter who will like meet you across the land and like do little missions with you to find clues about Zelda.
That's awesome.
It's never Zelda. It's always different things that are not Zelda.
Yeah.
What are some of like the most interesting things you guys have found? Like what, like that, without being like big spoilery stuff like that you can do or interact with, or just kind of things that surprised you?
That you want to go?
Oh, I have to go first. Okay.
Yeah.
No. I have some deeper thoughts, mostly about the newspaper, but I'll save them for a little bit later. The biggest thing that I found that I kind of wasn't ready for is a lot of the sky world, this area above normal Hyrule. And two things with that. One, you're lying about the various little islands in Sky World is all of these futuristic tech tools that you can kind of play with and craft.
Yeah.
But also, if you fall off the edge, it's not that you die, you just fall back down to normal Hyrule and you have to figure out your way to get back up. So there is some serious stakes in your time of like, I see something over there. I have the tools to propel me with flight to go from A to B. I just now need to do it correctly.
Yeah.
And it's almost like an emergent puzzle where it's like they didn't specifically intend for me to do this, but I'm here and I need to get there. So let's figure it out. And that has been super fun, trying to make little hover bikes or strapping rockets to a floating brick and just seeing if that'll work. So that for me has been a lot of fun, is exploring this new kind of like sky world.
Yeah. I think the sky kind of islands that they have it's such an interesting mechanic, and that I like that when you do screw up though and fall down, like you're not restarting or like like you're just going back down to the world, and it's so fluid in that like kind of okay, so I fell off, now I'm doing this now, I guess.
Yeah, and it's funny because it's almost like the stakes are your attention span, in a weird way, where it's like falling is not dying and restarting. Falling is just falling and then losing interest in what you were doing.
Yeah,
exactly.
Which, when I say it out loud, is really sad, but that's kind of what it is. Of like, once you land on the ground, you're like, oh, I guess I'll go do something else.
I love that feeling. Yeah, I spent this whole time climbing this like thing in the sky that was like this massive pillar. Finally got to the top and realized that like I can't get to the next section. I have to probably fly around it. I was like, I spent like 20 minutes doing that. And any other game, I would be super pissed off. And this, I was like, okay. I just like jumped off and then like went and found something else to do. I was like, this is just so crazy.
For the first like waypoint, like with the map, the
towers?
So, the towers. Yeah, the towers like reveal the area of the map, which was a thing in the first game, but like not to this extent, where it like launches you in the sky and you scan the area, which is great. I didn't know that was the point of those at the start, and so I just started climbing it. But then you couldn't get to the very top, so I was like, all right, I guess I'll just jump down. But it let you climb it, and I thought that was pretty fun.
Yeah.
So one thing I found that was interesting is, so I was like, I've been hunting a lot of the shrines, and then I found this shrine that's like you couldn't enter it, and I was like, what is this? And it needed a stone. It looked like a shrine, but you needed to find a stone and then bring it back to the shrine. I was like, that's a very creative. Like, before in the first game, stone. Everything was just a regular shrine, and now there's little creativity with some of the shrines, and like different objectives. Like, you don't just go into it, and then you'll have some crystal you have to like find and bring it to the shrine. Or
there's different shrine quests that kind of involve puzzles to do it.
Yeah, and I will say,
outside the shrine.
To add on to that, with the puzzle or the crystal finding shrine, like that's more than just pick it up in your inventory. That's like strap it to your air motorcycle that you've cobbled together, and try and blast yourself back over there and hope it doesn't all fall to the ground.
I had like a 4x4 with the giant wheels, just like going through the desert.
Yeah,
it's like bring it through.
And I love that, like that kind of sense of like creativity and what you want to kind of accomplish, but like playing around like, that's not going to work. Like you like do something that like flies away. You're like, shit.
I know.
But
and
you have to go ahead.
There is a like heavy impermanence to the item building. Like it's not like you get a garage to play with this stuff endlessly. It's like once you accidentally slap the rocket to turn it on and it flies off into the distance, it's gone.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they make a point.
Yeah,
they make a point of saying that these items that you can use will despawn soon. Like it is not permanent. So it is just very much like an in the moment thing of like when your little like wing glider totally screws up and just falls back to earth and you're watching it go down. It's like, that's it.
Can't go back.
That's the end. And you know, much like the destructible weapons, if you are into that, it's great. If you are not into that, it's hell.
So does that really frustrate you with this game, that like stuff like that can happen?
For me, no.
Okay.
Because I think you have to surrender yourself for these Zelda games, and Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, these Zelda games. Yeah. You have to surrender yourself to a certain level of zen, of just like out of sight, out of mind.
Yep.
Don't worry about it. I know it's very contentious. If you are into that, you thumbs up it. If you're not into that, it absolutely sucks.
Yeah.
I was able to get into that, but there is a small part of my creative brain that would prefer just like
be able to store
a garage. Yeah, I don't know if like the internet's the internet, and there are so many great creations online of people making these like, air fucking bombers with the
bomber jets that some people make is so crazy.
Yeah, or like with complex bomb dropping mechanisms that they make cluster bombs to just like carpet bomb enemy areas, and it's all just for fun because once they made that, it despawns and it's over. Yeah, it's not like they're just riding around the whole game in that thing.
Which is so funny,
right?
Yeah, I saw someone make an AT-AT walker that like actually walked like it does in the. Like, that's just crazy that people are making these are already like within like a month making these kind of creations.
Yeah.
This game does something very similar to Elden Ring that Breath of the Wild kind of did as well, but it doesn't really tell you a lot of what to do. There's not a lot of tutorials. It's not very handholdy. I have currency that right now that I've found from the big things in the caves that like drop the little stars. You know what I'm talking about? The glowy things in the caves.
Yep.
I have no idea what to do with those, and I've played this game for like 70 hours, and I've never met someone to spend these on. So it's like I love that the game doesn't push you any which way. What do you feel about that? Compared to Elden Ring, how does that kind of sense of discovery feel? Because it's very different, obviously, but
yeah.
I think it's right up my alley, like in terms of figuring out what these components do. And if you're a hoarder, you just like you collect everything, so you make sure you're like, I don't know when I'll need that, or what that'll be used for. So like all the ore, all the minerals, like every single like item, except for like weapons or shields, like you just collect them. I'm just collecting them.
Yeah.
Until I know like when I need to use them or what they're going to be used for.
Mm-hmm.
That's basically where I'm at. I know that there's different like star things or the different fruit. Like there's just fruit everywhere.
And there's a lot of fruit in this game.
And then it's the same thing with like cooking. And the cooking was like that in the first game where it's like you just try to figure out, slap some stuff together, and okay, you got like a big mushroom skewer or something like that. But sometimes like you got cold resistance, you got heat resistance, you got all this stuff, and that's still from the early game. But now like you can save the recipes and look it up and like figure out what made what. That is amazing.
That's a great system, the recipe saving.
Yeah.
I do like the recipe saving. For me the vagueness that is Elden Ring now back translated to Tears of the Kingdom. For me, it didn't land quite as hard this time around. Maybe it's because of my third time doing it.
Yeah.
Significantly. I think it's because with Elden Ring, you knew that wherever you were going to go, you were going to be testing your thumbs.
Oh yeah.
And so everything in Elden Ring, you'd like thematically that game told you everything you do is going to be a fucking challenge. So like,
good luck.
Ante up.
Yeah.
For me, Zelda, I mean, none of it's like too insanely difficult necessarily, and you are collecting a lot of things. And I will say, I had a gripe with the first game, and it's still a gripe in this game because they're not different. Where the cooking, it's very fun and very interesting, and you can save recipes. So if you successfully do something now, you can do it again. But just the idea of just combining 2 to 5 items and just kind of hoping for the best at the start. For me, that was just really annoying of like, I just need my health pots. Just give me health pots.
But Link sings a song while he cooks now. He sings different Zelda themes throughout all the games. How cute is that?
But either way, I'm just like trial and erroring my way through the cooking. And I am not a fan of it. I wasn't a fan of it initially. Kind of like what you said, where like nobody makes elixirs. because if you mix a monster part and a food, it just destroys everything.
Yeah.
So everyone stays away from the monster parts because they don't want to ruin their food.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's why they use the fuse ability. They're like, well, that's what we'll use the monster parts pretty much for now.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Anytime I get an elixir from like a quest, I'm like, yeah, I'm probably not going to use this. This will be sold to Beetle when I go and find him.
Right.
Yeah. That crazy man. James,
I saw Beetle.
You saw Beetle?
Yeah, because
he's everywhere.
You've run into the horse. The horse.
He's at every stable.
Thing.
I really
why do you
like
have a horse now? Like I still haven't got a horse. First game I never got a horse. I'm not gonna get a horse. I still haven't got a horse.
Wait, so you didn't have any horses in the first game?
No.
So this game does something really cool. It imports your horses from Breath of the Wild.
Oh well.
Well, not yours.
But not yours. 0 horses, James.
Yeah, I never had a horse.
Yeah, I have all my horses from Breath of the Wild, which I think was pretty cool. I was like, wow, that's a pretty good read. Ted, do you have a talking point on Tears of the Kingdom you want to bring forth?
I do.
Okay, what do you got for me?
I have 2.
Okay.
Do you want to hear my general gripes about this game, or do you want to hear something interesting that I'm thinking about when I play it? Which one do you want to hear first?
James, what do you want to hear first?
What are you thinking about?
I was thinking gripes.
Oh. Well, now I'm conflicted. Okay, let's start with gripes.
Okay.
So, one thing I
want to disagree with everything you're about to say.
No. It's not really like a gripe. It's just that I think that Breath of the Wild 10 out of 10 nailed its theming.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like we're talking about with the Great Plateau, where you finish the tutorial island, literally, and then you're given this huge open expanse and the tools to deal with it, and it's up to you to figure it out. And I feel because Tears of the Kingdom is technically a different game, not an add-on to an already existing game, even though it is, they have to rush you through that beginnings part again. And so I will say the beginning of this game is a lot of like, remember how to do this? Cool, done. Remember how to do this? Cool, done. It's, to us talking about the horses, like right away you get to a stable, you import your old horses, and then one of the first quests you can get is to go get a fantastic horse right away. And so right away they're just like, all right, remember horses? Get a good one. Here you go. And to me, that kind of the prologue of this game was kind of muffled because it was a lot of just like, remember this? Cool. And so for me, the theming didn't feel quite on point in that sense. I still think Breath of the Wild did a much better job of like blowing your mind with this open, vague expanse for you to just figure out. This game feels much more like, let's get you up to speed.
Because we had a game to go do, yeah.
Right, exactly. Same thing with a lot of this stuff where like the towers is now like a beginner quest, because that, we're talking about the towers where you explore things. Before it was just kind of, you're told like, go out there and do this. This is a very like, okay, remember these? Right. This is exactly how this works.
Yeah. The tutorial definitely like is a little more, you're right, like it is like a little more forceful.
Yeah, and it goes to this thing of like, if you told me in 7 years that the Switch 2 is getting a Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom duo remaster game that's just all one game, I would totally believe you. Like one could just feed into the other and you can kind of skip this awkward prologue.
It's a 300-hour game.
Yeah, because they're like running off the same systems in the background. There's this awkward beginning where they need to reintroduce you really quickly. Same thing with the powers, where like in Breath of the Wild you slowly learn these powers over time.
You just get all of them right away.
Yeah. In this game you get them all right away, back to back. And it felt very rushed. So that's my only real gripe with this game, having not finished it or anything.
No, I think that's fair. I was actually, the question that I wanted to kind of talk about later was like, how good is this game if you hadn't played Breath of the Wild? Like, is it hard to understand what you're supposed to do? Like, is it a little more obtuse than Breath of the Wild kind of simplistic approach? Because there is so many systems going on with this game. And I feel like that's kind of what that tutorial kind of proves. Is it's like pushing all the systems at you.
I think so. I think if you didn't like Breath of the Wild, this game will not swing your opinion at all. No. If anything, I think it'll reinforce what you didn't like about Breath of the Wild.
Well, it's very clearly a sequel. This is the next Breath of the Wild.
If you didn't like the first game, you are not going to like this game.
Yeah.
And similarly, I think if you were to come into this game blind, this would feel like a lot very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
It depends on what kind of gamer you are, obviously. Some people could really just want to get things going.
Yeah.
But I think Breath of the Wild was a masterclass of pace in letting you experience it. And I don't think that this one, I don't know, I don't want to call it stick the landing, but like enters into it quite as well. I think thematically it's going for something different, and it kind of shows.
Yo, yeah. I would
where
say
it's not. Yeah,
the theme of
yeah,
this is very different than Breath of the Wild. It's like dire,
yeah,
bleak theme. This is like kind of zany, boppy. Every character's crazy. There's wild things going on in every city. You know, there's a mayor race going on in one of the cities that you become part of the mayor race.
yeah,
You know, like there's just these wild things rather than like everything was a little more dark in Breath of the Wild.
yeah.
Yeah.
Breath of the Wild is very much this like. It's kind of a like discover at your own pace, kind of like this timeless lost land, almost more like an Elden Ring,
Yeah,
where you're not really sure where you're going. You're kind of figuring it out, and that's part of the beauty. I mean, it goes back to that whole thing of like you should be able to see a shrine
yeah.
everywhere you pop out from a shrine. You should see a new shrine. That little bit of magic I didn't quite feel in this game. I was looking around for shrines and for the first time didn't see any, and I was like, okay.
Because
Turns
now
out you
it's
had to
all
go
about launching yourself up into the sky.
exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think if you hadn't played any Zelda game, any of these two modern Zelda games, still start with Breath of the Wild. I still think it's worth it.
Yeah, oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I don't think this replaces it, but I think it refines it to. I think it'd be a little tough to go back to Breath of the Wild after this.
Mm-hmm.
I think Breath of the Wild's like loop would be a lot slower.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like exploring the world.
Mm-hmm.
All right, do you have another gripe?
No, I have my fun fact.
Okay, fun fact.
Fun fact.
Okay, so this is my conspiracy theory, but I want you guys to hear me out on this one.
Okay.
Because this game was conceived, as far as we know, in a pandemic world.
I think it was before.
Was it how? Do you know how far it was before?
I don't know, but this was
1 year.
this was a sequel, like that they were going to make as a DLC pack, and then it just got so big, and they were just like, you know what, this is a new game.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense conceptually, but hear out my conspiracy theory.
Sure, of course.
Because I was just thinking about this game living in a post-pandemic world, where there is a catastrophe. The princess goes missing.
Always.
The castle flies up into the sky, and like all of the prologue and a lot of the beginning stuff is just like all the people you're talking to are like totally competent and handling it. And there's a whole bunch of like structure around, just like we have a crisis response team, and that's like one of the people you talk to. And there's like, we talk to the people down in the shelter who are safe. And similarly, you're like, all right, now you can go be a news reporter and do good journalism. And
I think there's that hint of this.
Oh,
game.
and give the truth to people. And you're like,
yeah. Oh no, I think the story has a lot of reflex on our current world. And
I was like, this is trying to be a lot more poignant than I think. I don't know if that was on purpose or not, but I was just laughing through that whole prologue of like, this is kind of on point.
On point. I mean, there's definitely more story in this game than any other Zelda game. I mean, there's definitely more characters and interactions and side stories and stuff. There's tons of quests. It's kind of crazy.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I think you always, in most games, like, I won't bother with some NPC, but I'm always interested in what an NPC has to say. Like, sometimes they'll have something interesting or looking for something, and it leads you to something. Like, it's just like, what info do you have, or what's going on here?
And every character you talk to is like an actual character. It's really fascinating to me. Yeah. Like just the way they talk or anything.
That's very impressive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And there's like voice acting scenes, which is kind of interesting for Zelda. Like there was a little bit in the first game, but there's a lot in this.
That actually really bothered me. And I think it's just because they didn't fully commit, where like sometimes you get a fully voice acted cutscene with the character who's like saying in English, and then literally it just transitions to stopping, and they're just like, "What?"
Yeah, it's just
and then you see text. I'm like, "Oh man."
Yeah, it's like always like half measure. It's always like half a scene, and then it stops, and it's like, okay, there's the budget.
Yeah. I know it was. Yeah, it felt like that. I was just like, man, maybe just don't do it if you can't fully commit.
You can't fully commit to it.
Because that just got so annoying of like, oh, they're just like, wow. And you're like, all right, right. They're not actually talking.
I did a temple the other day, and the guy you're doing the temple with, you always have like an NPC when you do a temple with you, which is kind of fun. And every time you activated his power, he made the most annoying noises where I was like, oh, buddy, you can't do this every time.
Can't
like,
do this.
This is a video game problem that we should not have to endure anymore.
Yeah.
James, any thoughts on Tears of the Kingdom that's been percolating in your brain?
Yeah, I think we hit on this really early on, and one thing I want to say is I'm maybe you guys know, maybe you don't know. This game is about a tenth the size of Jedi Survivor in terms of file size. It's 16 gigs, and Jedi Survivor is probably around the 160 gig mark now with all these patches and the updates. 16 gigabyte game on a cartridge. I got a physical. Ted, you did too. Eventually.
Eventually.
My poor local game store.
Jake, we hit on this like really early on, which is kind of like what makes a good game. Is it the graphics? Is it the style? And I
Yeah.
think this game is pretty clear that the graphics at times don't really shine, and there's maybe some slowdown, but other times I can't, when I think about it, when I like think about the game, it looks beautiful in my mind.
Yeah.
And I think that's because like you're just playing this game and so immersed that everything kind of fills in. Like I think back on Breath of the Wild too, and I think it's the best looking game on the Switch I've ever played, and then this feels the exact same way, which is very surprising because we talked about it was like a 2017 game, and no other games like touched it since.
Yeah.
And this
Yeah.
here they come again, like
You know,
saying we're still a top dog.
and I'll give two sides to the sword. It is something of an enigma because we haven't seen anything like it really since. Mario Odyssey was very good,
Yeah.
but a lot of 2022, 2023 Switch games aren't
Aren't
yeah
good.
aren't
I mean,
aren't handling
yeah.
the tech the same way. That being said, I don't think it's too fair to say they did it again because I guess they technically
They
did it
already
again,
did
but
it.
they already did it. Like this
Yeah.
isn't a brand new game from scratch, and they mastered the Switch technology on again.
Although I
Um,
think it's definitely a lot better on the OLED, because when I went back and played Breath of the Wild on when I had got the OLED,
mhm.
there was noticeably more uh hiccups
Oh,
in
yeah.
terms of like graphic fidelity. But this is definitely more tuned.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's it still feels great there.
Yeah, I haven't
Yeah.
had a lot of frame rate dips or anything, except when I'm like diving from the sky to the like land to the underground. Like
Right.
that, there's like
Okay.
there's like a stoppage. Like the game stops and it's
Yeah.
like, hold on, let me get there. But I haven't had any really big tech problems or anything. Zero crashes, zero bug outs.
Same here.
Yeah.
My only tech problems has been slow down whenever something explodes and hits a bunch of people, there will be some slowdown there, like when a bomb arrow goes off and hits a bunch of bobkins. But it's fairly minor, and at this point, this is not a good thing. But with the Switch being what it is, I'm just like, Switch is gonna switch.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's
Um,
just like it's fine.
Yeah.
It doesn't need to look like Jedi Survivor in terms of graphics in that game.
Yeah. It doesn't need ray
When we
tracing.
compare,
It
when we compare it, it's like, yeah, it doesn't need that.
Yeah, but it has such a great art style. I think the art style almost kind of like undercuts its
Right.
need for HD 4K graphics.
right. Continuing off of the praise of Breath of the Wild, it does exceptionally well with less.
Mm-hmm.
And this just is the same example of that.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't need the 100 gigabytes of HD textures.
Isn't that crazy? It's 16 gigs. That's mind blowing to me.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah.
And it has like zero major tech problems, which is just fantastic with how
Awesome.
games release nowadays.
Tell me about it. I could aim my arrow the whole time.
1 year, 1 year polish. That's what
When
you
you're
need.
polished, man. And boy, does it show.
Can you
Just
imagine?
how this game interacts with itself just constantly is just like always interesting. It's so cool. I just kind of can't
wait
get
to play
over it.
more.
I know you got to play more. One thing I recommend checking out too, James. There's a setting called like Pro Mode, and it turns off basically your HUD, and it looks beautiful, especially on handheld because like the HUD's pretty cluttered.
Right.
I really think it looks great. Like when you get hit, it shows your hearts in the top left. When you use your stamina, it shows it, but there's no mini map. That's the only thing. But
That's
interesting.
fine. I actually always am clicking like the big map because I'm.
oh yeah, then you should try this because I think it works out a lot
I don't
better with
really
no
need
mini
it.
map. Because
Okay.
I find myself always watching the mini map rather than the game that's happening before me.
Okay, I'll take a look.
Any final thoughts on Tears of the Kingdom? I'm sure we'll talk a lot more about this game throughout this year.
I'm
No.
just looking forward to playing more and
Yeah,
exploring. I've been
just-
stuck in the same area so for so long. I gotta get
Yeah,
out.
you gotta see more.
Yeah. My final thoughts is just it's Breath of the Wild again, but different.
Yeah, yeah.
If you liked Breath of the Wild, definitely give this game a try. If you didn't like Breath of the Wild, save your money.
Yeah, you will
My-
not like this one.
Yeah.
So my coworker was talking to me yesterday, and he was like just brought up Tears of the Kingdom.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, my wife is still playing Breath of the Wild, and she doesn't want to play Tears of the Kingdom until she beats it. And so I never played Breath of the Wild, and so he was like, so I just started playing Tears of the Kingdom because she's not gonna play it. And he's like, I didn't realize how good it is, and I told him I was like, maybe you should stop and play Breath of the Wild. But
Yeah.
now that we're talking, I was like, actually, maybe I'll tell him just keep playing Tears of the Kingdom because maybe it's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, I
We
wonder
don't
like how
really
hard it would be to go back now too. With now that he doesn't have all these abilities, it's like
I think so now thinking about it in my head, you're gonna lose a lot in terms of the people you meet and the from the first game
Yeah.
and this new game, because
I
they're all
love
like,
that.
"Oh yeah, I remember you. Yeah, you remember me?" And it's like, "Who are you?" Because they just assume you know everyone in this game.
Yeah, I do love that, like, you are the same Link and like they all know
Yeah,
you. I
yeah,
just
yeah,
can't
yeah.
get over that. Yeah.
Right.
You
Which is
gotta-
because that's always like almost always not the case.
yeah, yeah. I mean,
yeah.
Link is always a newcomer in this
Link is
world.
always new. Yeah.
I love that for the first real time that I can really remember, he's not, which is super cool.
Yeah.
I think the way this game is a sequel is just like fantastic.
Finally.
Yeah. My only thought is, I mean, Breath of the Wild is like one of my favorite games, and they've just made this a better Breath of the Wild. In my opinion, like I think it just elevates pretty much everything except for maybe like Ted was talking about the theme of it, the vibe.
Yeah, for me it's more Breath of the Wild,
Yeah.
which is not a bad thing.
No, I mean,
No.
But I think my final takeaway is like if you haven't played Breath of the Wild and think you'll like it, do
that
it.
one, yeah.
This doesn't replace it, which I think is special for me as someone who liked Breath of the Wild a whole bunch.
Yeah, me too. I do too.
Yeah. Do you guys think there's going to be a third one? Think there's going to be a trilogy?
No.
I think it's going to be Zelda from here on out is this. But I think it's not going to be the same world anymore. I think it'll be a different world.
So you think future Zelda will be the classic reset, but we are going to see more
of this kind of game, this physics box, open world RPG, go anywhere and do anything.
Gotcha.
That's what Zelda is going forward.
Yep.
I mean,
does that mean
It can't go back.
I guess I don't want to take up too much of the time, but
you can.
You think they're like you think we're gonna get like a Breath of the Wild Wind Waker thing where you're building boats,
Dude,
in a sandbox world? Like, what do you think's next?
I would love that if it was like islands.
You could build boats and choose.
But like, what if it was like all these like big, massive islands that all had different shit to do?
Yeah, I don't.
That's what they incorporate next. It's like Sky Islands, and then
Yeah.
we regular island. And then there's a whole ocean. And
There's
you
like an
cross it.
underwater.
We were
kingdoms.
talking about that for Elden Ring, right? Like the DLC would be like you just like go across the ocean.
Yeah, on the other side. Yeah.
Some ship comes and takes you.
I'm fascinated by what Zelda like where it goes next. Like, what's the second part? I'm kind of curious how this game ends. I mean, who knows? Maybe it tees up some sequel. So,
yeah.
But it's very cool. I really love this game. I'm can't wait to talk more about it. Once you guys play a lot more, we'll kind of revisit it and go through it again because it's just fantastic. So, thank you so much for watching the 135th episode of the Sidescape Gaming Podcast. My name is Jake. That's James. That's Ted. And we will see you next week.